Hi, my name is Dan Griggs. I work here at Jamf. Previously, a few other companies, one of which you probably know most recently, CMD Security. Jamf acquired us about a year and a half ago or so. My whole expertise has really been around telemetry and in the government space, so really highly regulated industries, and that will copy pretty well over to healthcare, finance, all the other folks who are really subject to very stringent controls on what your computers can and cannot do and what kind of information you need to get out of these computers. So today, I just want to talk through what I mean by through the forest of the telemetry is like what's actionable today as a small business, what's actionable today as a medium, and then in the enterprise, like what can we do to really optimize our deployments and to kind of Tarantino it a little bit. The finish up front. So for small business, your main goal, your North Star is really collect everything you can, store it somewhere off the device, and start looking at an analysis engine or a SIEM, as they call it, SIEM. In medium business, you really want to focus on automating all the alerts, building out that library of alerts, really making sure that whenever something that you don't want to happen does happen, you're alerted about it. And then the enterprise, that's much more nuanced. There's full automation, that's both detection and response. That's when you'll start talking about correlating events from different devices. I don't mean this Mac and that Mac. I mean this Mac and that router and that storage device. That kind of disparate logs you can start bringing together to really bring out a full, timeline of exactly what happened. Just rough numbers. This is all organizations mature at different rates and speed depending on their industry and just like a million other factors, but just general terms. Small business is something like less than 1,000 employees. Medium business, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 employees. And to further drive home that point, enterprise really kicks in at 1,500 employees or above. But again, it's just general guidelines. There could be a 5-person company that is far more advanced than some enterprise companies as far as their security posture, personnel, and deployments. So it really depends on the industry and how you're approaching your security posture and what your risk factors are, all of which are a very long and nuanced discussion. We can't really cover here, but that's what you have to do. And to kind of kick it one level further down, like what is telemetry? I know, probably they're logs, but what kind of logs? They're all about what actions were performed. That's usually security in nature, not always. The system log is technically a form of telemetry. It's just when people say telemetry, typically they mean security in nature. That would be who's logging in, what's running. That's both applications, scripts, commands, terminal activity, things like that. And then most changes, if you're particularly technical, syscalls would be what's logged generally in telemetry. But most changes to the system that would affect not just your user is another good litmus test to really find out what's all included in telemetry. The other big takeaway is that modern security systems have to be designed as if your environment will be breached in the future. It's just a definite. It is unreasonable to expect full 100% preventative coverage from any security tool ever. It's just unreasonable. So you have to design tools to detect when breaches do happen rather than trying to chase, we can never let a breach happen. It's just not tenable, it's not feasible, it's not realistic in really any deployment besides putting a computer that's turned off into the bank vault, that classic example. Then maybe you could do it, but otherwise not. So, why telemetry? Why do we care about this so much? Like we were saying, it's the best tool to find, a pervasive threat. It's the best tool to find a threat that might already be in your environment. There are some government security mandates. If you are in the government, work with the government, or are beholden to any of those, you just straight have to legally. And then what happens is the government mandates kind of feed down cyber insurance requirements. Cybersecurity companies view the government as kind of the authoritative source for security and what needs to happen. So typically what we see are a control will start in the government level, trickle down to insurance level. Insurance companies will either require it or give you a break on your rates if you do this. And then that will trickle down to cooperative orgs, the target examples, things like that. In order for them to be secure, your smaller company also has to be secure. So then a lot of these requirements do trickle down and do apply to you, even though reading the document, it may not seem like they do. They find some way to get you usually. So what's actionable? So if I'm a small company, how do I get started in all this? Because it's a big mountain to climb. I don't want to mince words, but it's all compartmentalized. It's all you can bring Lego bricks. It all builds on each other. So as long as you start on the right foot, you'll end up on the right foot, kind of thing. So it's really not as bad as it may first seem. So some of the considerations you will be facing as a small business, again, this is typically everybody, security org matures at different rates, but you will not typically have dedicated staff. You'll typically be limited in budget. You'll typically have external organization requirements. That would be either a larger partner org you hope to do business with, government, or some mix there in between. And then usually you're starting from square one. You say, we have to do this thing. I have to Google it now and find out what's going on. That's kind of what the problem we're facing is. So the goal is to really get around and start on the right foot is to be realistic. You're not going to start off with a mature InfoSec org automatically responding to threats and things like that. You need to make sure that all the data you're getting is complete. And by that, I mean all the fields are filled in. And by that, I mean also all of the different attack avenues are filled in. You need to get that data off the device so it can't be manipulated after the fact. If I was an attacker, the very first thing I would do is cover my tracks. These telemetry logs would be chief among those things that I would clear out. Ideally, you want to collect it centrally. Not a hard requirement. If you have to do it by a local office or something like that, that's also fine. The main key takeaway is just not on the computer you collected it from. And then perfect world, you'd want to do some kind of analysis tool. They call them SIMs, security information event managers. Typical ones, big players is Splunk, Logstash, things like that. That will help you run lots of advanced analytics searches. It's a way to search on and transform the data and make them into alerts, graphs, charts, whatever you want to do. The main takeaway here is really focus on the fundamentals. You can't jump straight to that mature org. So really, it's like the Globetrotters. That's why they're so great, is they absolutely focus on the fundamentals. They can dribble like no other person on Earth, and it's just the fundamentals. They're just really, really, really good at it, and that leads them to all the higher level actions and wants and desires. Like it just all feeds into each other. Some of the tips along the way, you, again, coming back to that personnel problem, you typically want to look at a cloud-hosted SIM. Chief of the requirements you should be looking at is the portability of your data. So if I change vendors sometime in the future, how does that process work? Be sure to ask that question in the purchasing process. Jamf Protect can help you stream data there. I call that out because we have a very curated data stream. Typically, it's in the hundreds of megs to get this kind of data. We've got it in the, somewhere between 6 and 15 meg a computer a day, give or take. Find a managed detection and response provider if you can, if you want that additional help. The split between the managed security service provider, they're more do it for you. They will send you an alert, send you an email if something bad happens, something bad to be defined by you, them, or somewhere in between. The managed detection and response vendor is more the expert you can call. They're your partner in figuring things out. They will help you make remediation actions. They will help you decide what is and isn't in scope, what is and is not important. That's really what we would suggest if you are truly starting from square one and don't see this as a mountain you can climb. An MDR vendor, the managed detection and response vendor, is really the person or company you would want to seek out. They would be kind of the trusted advisor. Calling out the Protect telemetry stream, if this seems hard to filter down all this data and get it to where you need to go, we just recently released some features into Protect to help you do that. We have curated feeds. Again, it's like 6 to 15 some odd meg per computer in a 24-hour span. And we simplify it for you. Do you want to log it to the local disk? And if so, what permissions and things like that? Do you want to collect any other flat file logs, syslog, Wi-Fi.log, things like that? And then how much do you care about this computer? Level 1, level 2. Level 2, more information. And then do you want it verbose or not? That's it. Those are your only options for collecting the data. We've done everything else for you. We also can send it wherever you need it to go, wire it up to Splunk or whatever you need to do. If there's always data that you don't want, so there's a particular app, process, user, something like that you want to exclude from the logs, all of our exceptions will also apply to any of the telemetry logs. We have a bunch of rule definitions in there. So for medium business, after you've done first principles and I'm ready to kind of do the second step, what should I do? What should be my North Star? So remediation, some of the considerations, some of the problems you might face. Remediation is always a human in the loop. Somebody has to do something. That's chiefly concerned for time zones. Threats happen 24 hours a day. Does your security team awake 24 hours a day? Do you have a split team, somewhere advantageous for time zones? A lot of the threats are kind of ill-defined because it's not always malware. It's sometimes this malicious insider, sometimes it's other things like that. So you need to start building out that library of, generically things you care about as a company, things you care about as a security org. Do we care about when people airdrop? Do we care about when people visit certain websites? And that again falls back into the risk profile. We need to talk about what are we worried about? How bad will it be if that thing happens? And how likely is that thing to happen? It is kind of the calculus you have to throw into the mix of, sure, it's super duper bad if somebody steals all of our stealth fighter plane designs, but that computer is kept turned off in a locked bank vault. So our risk profile is very low. That's why they call it mitigation in most times. It is mitigating a concern, at the kind of the top level, even though at the technical level, mitigation may seem like a misnomer. That's where it kind of comes from. Again, typically everybody's different, but typically. Some of your North Stars as a business, medium business, detect the threats in nearly real time. Nearly real time I'm defining as in within 10 minutes. Automate it if at all possible. Start building out the detection library as you find, oh, that's a good thing we found that. And every time you find yourself saying that, save that search into your detection analysis engine of choice, just using Splunk just for the easy example. Start saving those searches. That way you kind of build out a catalog of what's quote unquote bad. Every org's different. What bad is in one org could be just fine and normal operations in another. And then the trick is you start building out dashboards from those saved searches. Like, oh, I need to know how many computers are not compliant with X, Y, or Z. Make it a pie chart. Make it a number that just pops up and turns red if it's not what you want it to be. That's kind of how those dashboards develop organically. And there are 1.5 million examples on the web if you need inspiration. They are everywhere. Some of the tips to get there, really focus on threat hunting. Threat hunting, by that I mean searching through the logs and finding out what is, just from a data normalization standpoint, what is weird, what's different. Then start pulling on those threads. What else is different about those threads? How did those threats come to be? Not threats, excuse me. How did those processes or applications, events, how did they come to be? Was it intentional? Was it malicious? The other trick would be to get non-security data into the SIMs, and by that I mean primarily business data, because that way if you get sales and business involved into your same tools, you will have a much easier time with funding. Then the sunk cost of internal IT is much easier to argue for external sales, bringing money in. It's also bring in IT into your analysis engine. Now you can start piping in break-fix logs. One of the few ways you can be preemptive in IT. Fix something before it breaks. Pretty much the only way you can do that is with logs. And when I said usually there's security in focus, and that would be the usually part of it. Your other good bet is to find a threat intelligence feed. That would be just a information feed, typically with technical content, like how to actually detect or indicators of compromise. Look for this file in this location. For all the new and emerging malware threats and things like that. A good actual feed of just information you can use how you want. And then growing internal detections organically, like we were talking about, those saved searches. That is key to really building out a really robust detection engine. And that detection engine, the part of the problem with it is that it's custom to every business, but part of the greatness of it is that it's custom to every business or organization, I should say. You don't have to be a business. And that is exactly what you need when it's done. You have to build it yourself through time or through trusted advisors and experts. How we help with that is there's a lot of the threat feed content pre-made. We know what's going on. We generate a lot of that content for you in Protect. That's one of the big drivers in the analytics into letting you know automatically when certain bad things happen. We have a very comprehensive list of what constitutes a quote-unquote bad thing. That could be malware, it could be spyware, it could be unwanted actions on the behalf or from the user. The other thing, the managed detection response partner we've been talking about, Security Ally, Red Canary, excellent example of that. They have playbook responses. They help you integrate with Pro for remediation. Their playbooks actually integrate with Pro, I should say. And they actually integrate with Protect for the information feeds, to include here the telemetry feeds. And then we start talking about enterprise. That's where it gets a lot more nuanced, because here the road splits a lot. But we can talk through some of the considerations, how we got here, and what you might want to think about as we go through this. So some of the considerations, now we start to have to worry about data cost. We were, in some cases too successful in bringing other data into the analysis engine. Sales, business, IT might be generating a lot of different, a large volume of data. So you have to start paring down the data feeds either in number of feeds or in the contents of those feeds, thinning them out a little bit. Paring down the alert volume, you have to be much more selective in what automated alerts happen because of all the volumes involved once you hit this kind of level. The complexity of the deployments. Do you have multiple offices? Do you have VPNs in between those offices? What kind of routing equipment? Are people working from home or the office, or a split, or their Zoom rooms, or like a million different things? And then here, this is kind of a new thing of the specificity of threats. Once you hit this size, up until now, all the attacks have largely been automated dragnet kind of things. Once you hit this size, you might be specifically targeted. And that's when you have to really step up your game. And that's when telemetry comes, doubly again more important, because there are no known detection signals, if you will. There's no known way that they will hack specifically you. And that's why I was talking about how all these security tools, it's unreasonable to expect 100% blocking because of threats like that. It could be specific to you, something unknown to anybody else, a 0 day, if you will, threat that could be attacking you. And then it could just be a 0 day that they're trying in a blanket automated attack. There's just a bad luck aspect to this too. Make sure you're covered, and a lot of what we're doing today will hedge against all those different risks. That's why we've been collecting telemetry and making sure it's complete since we were a brand new company, all the way through to now. That's really been eating our vegetables, if you will. And this is where it's going to pay dividends, because we are now ingrained in us. We have the protections from those unknown threats. The what if that will keep you up in the middle of the night. You can just search the logs. If it happened, it'll be there. And that's part of the assurances of a lot of the tools that Apple is giving us with the endpoint security framework of, if a thing happens, it will be in these logs. And with that attestation, we can then say, if it happened, it's in these logs, and we, transitive on down and really attest to what's going on in your environment. It's kind of the only way to do that. So your goals in the enterprise really be to act on the data in real time. Again, it's largely volume driven. You just don't have the personnel, or shouldn't hire the personnel, because it would be cost prohibitive to handle all these alerts, and they would largely be false alerts, false positives. You really want to start correlating data in between the disparate systems, and that's what I meant by the macOS laptop and the router and the DNS server and Active Directory server, what have you. All those events are linked together, so you can see a complete picture, not just from one point of view. You can look at the entire string of events from any point of view from any of the participants, is kind of the goal, if you will. The two different goals would be to act on it in real time, and then whenever you can, automate it because of the volume involved. That's why you need to automate it, because of the volumes involved. You just don't have the personnel to really get that done at the level you'd want to protect your enterprise. So where we kind of envision ourselves in the enterprise, where we design, protect, to do, and kind of slot in. And again, I'm tying this all back into our thought process as we designed everything. We want to be the puzzle piece that fits into the larger Mac story within the enterprise. We want to be able to be the best way to get the Mac data and all the Mac Apple specific technology and processes like AirDrop, get all of that data out to your InfoSec's tools that they already know and use. We want the analytics to alert both you and InfoSec. That would be kind of the main level known malware kind of alerts and things like that. and then forward those alerts on to security, because that way at your level you can break fix. At that level, at your level, you can chase down security alerts and keep some of the more IT-focused tasks out of security's hands. And then security still gets all of the signal, all of the alerts and analytics that they would want out of the environment. So they can see both the forest and the trees, if you will. So the analytics being the signpost of, you may not understand the hardcore telemetry logs, but here is a signpost of Dan ran this app and it didn't work, or Dan logged in and it did work, things like that. With the enterprise summary, that's kind of where we fit in. The larger org has the full telemetry detail. The Mac admins have the actionable alerts. So that would really help out InfoSec and really take a lot of the Mac hesitancy out of it. If they don't have to actually remediate things on macOS, if they don't have to affect change on macOS, I have found that to be a lot easier conversation with InfoSec than if they have to be the ones responsible for remediation and response. And that also keeps your environment, you being the Mac admin. You have full control over both the break fix and security remediation, as to a large extent at least. We also have the threat prevention, handling the known malware, and then InfoSec can focus on the intangibles, reading the telemetry, the unknown threats, if you will, and that frees everybody up to really work where they do their work the best, where you can focus in Jamf Pro and then Jamf Protect, mitigating some of those malware alerts. And then InfoSec can focus on their analysis tool, be that Splunk or something else, chasing down really threat hunting and chasing down the activities that may not be malware, but are still unwanted activities that quote unquote bad, if you will. With that, that's kind of what I wanted to cover with everything. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for listening.